Serafina Tane was raised in a cult, but she didn't think of it like that. What she knew was a close-knit community living together in the rolling green hills of New Zealand's south coast. Yes, there were rules, lots of rules, especially for girls, but there were also baby lambs and puppies and lots of other kids to play with. Serafina's family were part of Camp David, more commonly known as the God Squad, led by self-styled Bishop Douglas Metcalfe. Bishop Douglas taught his followers to fear aliens and communists and proclaimed that he was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. In reality, he was sexually abusing many of the girls and women in Camp David. Thankfully, Serafina escaped this, but she did have to remake her whole sense of the world and her place in it after the cult fell apart when she was still a teenager. Hi, Serafina.
Hi.
So Serafina is your name now, but it's not the name that you were given as a baby. What were you called then?
So I was born Miriyum, and my middle name Pearl, and my name was given to me, like all of us who were born there, by Douglas Metcalfe, and he got the name from God, apparently. And then my middle name I was named after his wife.
And what was unusual about the spelling of Miriyum for you?
Yeah, it was usually Miriyum is M-I-R-I-A-M, but mine was M-I-R-I-Y-U-M, because the names need to have, you can't have a name with 6 letters, like they needed to work out this, the number of letters in a name. So everything, we always avoided the number 6 for everything, so there's a spelling of your name, the number of letters in your name, yeah.
And this place where you lived as a child, Camp David, what did it look like from the outside?
Sort of like a castle. A lot of people would think that it was like living in a castle, and there was watchtowers painted white. There's padlocks on the just while you're talking, I'm just taking myself back there and just thinking from an outside perspective, what's that gonna? Yeah, how does that look like? Because it's home from the inside, but on the outside, yeah, it's very, very walled, gated. You can't get in unless you have the combination or somebody lets you in.
Inside those walls, if you could pass through that gate, what did it look like inside?
It's interesting because when I've been back, I'm like, wow, it's like something kind of a movie, actually. And we had this sunken garden, and it was all paved, and there was waterfalls, and there was the inside of the walls, which had paintings of them on them, flowers, trees. Yeah, it was fun. There was lots of things to explore. Yeah, and we had these different rooms. So we'd have the rock room, we'd have the library, we'd have the heraldry room, we'd have the sword room. We had all these rooms. There's a room for everything.
What was the rock room?
The rock room had these these rocks. I think that a lot of them were gifted by people in the cult who had been into collecting rocks before they joined the cult. And so you go in, and there's just these amazing rocks. Some of them that you'd turn off the lights and they'd glow in the dark. One of them was, my favourite one was the talcum powder rock. So you'd put your hands on it and rub it, and that's apparently where talcum powder comes from. I haven't actually checked that out to see if that's true, but it was called the talcum powder rock. Yeah, it was fascinating. I love the rock room.
And a sword room?
Sword room, yeah, so just swords on display. We had a fish room. We had all these different fish in there, turtles, yeah.
What did the leader of the cult, Bishop Douglas Metcalfe, look like?
He looked like kind of like Santa, but without the white beard. It was a dark beard. Yeah, just like a friendly grandpa kind of person. He wasn't tall. He was a little bit, sort of tubby, rounded, I suppose, a little bit. No, not an imposing person, and that's a fascinating thing. It was his personality that drew people to him, his openness, his friendliness, wherever he walked around Camp David, people would always follow him. He just had that charisma.
How did he dress on special ceremonial occasions?
He would have a cape, and everybody would have these staffs. We called them staffs. His was always decorated and fancy looking. And yeah, he'd dress up like a prince, I suppose. Like, imagine medieval England. That's That's probably the best way to describe it. Medieval England, that's what it was like, with a little touch of strangeness with the tea cozies.
The tea cozies, what do you mean?
We called them keepers, so they're the little hats that the men would wear, and they would be crocheted by the women, and everyone had one specifically for them, the colour of the star, the number of, the points in the star and that kind of thing. But yeah, we'd get teased as being, tea cozies when we're out in public.
And a lot of having looked at the photos, there's a lot of decoration. There's crosses and sashes and badges. Like there was a lot of imagery going on.
There was, and definitely not crosses actually, because we were taught that Jesus didn't die on a cross and that he died on a stake, so with his hands above his head, so not with his arms out. So actually the cross became in a way an evil symbol for us, and we had to cross the word cross out of the Bible, which I found strange because we were told we weren't allowed to change the words in the Bible, but here we were changing some words in the Bible. So there's a bit of conflict in my mind there. But it was a lot of Middle Eastern, with the St. John's cross. So it's a lot of the Middle Eastern symbology because he spent a lot of time in the Middle East. So brought that into the cult. So it was a real mixture of his own concoction of his life experiences, what he wanted to pull together and create his own version of religion and Christianity.
To be honest, Serafina, the photos today look kind of comic. I know it's meant to be grand and imposing, but the scale's small and all the outfits and decorations are very DIY. I mean, the men look pretty ridiculous. Did it ever seem that they looked silly to you as a kid?
No, it was quite the opposite actually. And we'd have, so we wouldn't celebrate Christmas, we'd celebrate Feast of Tabernacles, which is in October, and we'd have a week-long celebration. We'd all sleep in tents and we'd walk around. I remember we'd walk around the property with the horses. We'd dress the horses up in this heraldry costumes. We'd all dress up and we'd walk around, and I loved it. I really loved it. I didn't think that it was ridiculous at the time. It was really like a festival and a celebration, and it was us getting dressed up and colourful. It was actually really exciting.
What do you think about the photos now when you see them?
Exactly what you just said before. Oh my goodness! How could anybody think that was? Well, for me, what is the strangest is the people who joined when the cult was in full swing. To me, that's the oddest thing for me. So people who joined as the cult was just a community of people coming together, and then it grew. And, they bought the property, they built the property, things became more religious, and they grew it from there. But people who came when it was in its full swing, like those photos, I wonder what was going on in their head that made them think that was a good idea to join these wacky people who dressed up like that. I don't understand.
What were you wearing as a girl growing up there?
So we had to wear, as females, we had to wear skirts and dresses always below our knees, and we weren't allowed to wear singlets or anything like that. Our shoulders always had to be covered. We weren't allowed to cut our hair, had to wear a headscarf. We weren't allowed to wear jandals or thongs, you call them in Australia, so you weren't allowed to have anything that separated your big toe from your other toe, because that's a sign of slavery, apparently. We weren't allowed to wear makeup, nail polish, anything like that. We weren't allowed to have any piercings. We weren't allowed to wear black, purple, red, gold, royal blue. We had just black and white rules. And so sometimes you just knew that something was bad, so therefore it was evil when you don't do it.
Where did your family live in the compound?
So we lived on the property. So not everybody lived on the property, but we did. When we first moved there, we were living in tents. So we had 2 tents for 3 years, and then we moved to a bus. And so there was a sort of area where other people were in buses. We had an ablution block, so it's like a shared toilet, shower, bathroom,
a
washing
tent
area.
And a bus in the south coast of New Zealand. Was it freezing?
Freezing, yes. It was so cold. It was so cold. I remember I used to get whooping cough, so my mouth would be up against the side of the tent, and I'd be coughing and coughing, and Mum said it was called whooping cough. And but we didn't go to the doctor, so I would go and get prayed for by the elders. They stand around and put a little bit of oil on your head and pray for you, and God heal you.
How did you spend your time as a kid? What do you remember doing there at Camp David?
It was really fun as a kid. There was lots of animals, and my family was responsible for looking after all the animals. So we rode horses. I had pet lambs, goats. We milked the goats. It was growing up on a farm with the other kids, just running around, building huts, just having lots of fun, actually. It was riding our bikes around, like somebody had watched the BMX Bandits, and so then we became the BMX Bandits. So, yeah, it was lots of fun. Like, as a kid, it was lots and lots of fun, especially when we had the get-togethers, everyone coming together, a big community. It was fun.
You say that as a child for you, the leader, Douglas Metcalfe, came across as a jovial, kind of open, charismatic person. But, it was revealed later on that he was abusing girls and women during his time as the leader. Did you have any idea about that when you were growing up? Was there kind of this sense of a secret or a sense of something happening?
No, none at all, actually. It's you're just so naive to everything, and you completely trust when you're a little kid everything that's going on around you. So, and you've been told, there's bad things outside of the cult, all the evil was outside of the cult, we're safe in the cult. No idea at all, actually. Yeah.
What was his great religious teaching? I mean, what was the religious basis of the community?
He went into the desert, and when he was out in the desert up in the Middle East, an alien spaceship came, and he went on the spaceship, and I'm not sure what happened there on the spaceship, but somehow because of that, it was something to do with alien spaceships. He went on the spaceship, and that he needed to come back and create this community in New Zealand. I'm not sure all the intricate details, but there's something along those lines.
That's a big premise. That's a big starting point, though, isn't it? So he came back and started this community, and I mean, I guess one of the characteristics that's common to cults is enemies. There are always threats from the outside. Who did he tell his followers were the big dangers?
Everybody. The only people that were okay were the people who lived in Waipara, New Zealand, and that's what I used to just didn't understand as I got older. I'm like, how come only 300 people, it might have even been less, in Waipara, New Zealand are the only people who are going to go to heaven and everyone else in the world is going to hell? I was like, that didn't make sense. Like, how can God do that to all these people? So yeah, everybody, basically, everybody.
Did aliens then figure in the theology that he taught?
No, but we would watch lots of alien movies. I'd get really scared from those, actually, because I think for me a lot of what was done was around fear. So in cults they control through fear, so anything that is going to make people afraid. So worrying about aliens, one of the ones was an alien coming through the walls, they just come through the walls and they take you, and so you have this fear of aliens might come and get you. I just always had this fear, like even if I was out feeding my dogs and it was late at night, I'd just think, oh no, I've got to get back inside the walls, because otherwise the aliens, what if an alien come? One thing that we had to say, so if an alien did come and approached us, then you had to say, whose name do you come in? And if they say they come in the name of Jesus or Jesus Christ, then you have to run. But if they say they come in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, all of those words in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, then it was safe, they were okay, and you could go with them. But if they said anything else, even if they said they just come in Jesus' name, then you had to run, because they weren't, So,
what about communists, Serafina? What were you being told about the threat posed by communists?
So with the communism and this big fear of a one world government and the end of the world, and at the end of the world, Christians will be persecuted. We're going to have to bow down and worship these idols. There's going to be the number 666 will be tattooed on our foreheads and on our wrists. So in a way, we had this fear of, say, barcodes, because barcodes, apparently the long line on a barcode, each one of those represents the number 6, and then that always equated to 6. So, those barcodes would then be put on your head, and then that's how we're going to buy, how we're going to trade, how we're going to be able to function in the world. As Christians, we're not going to get the barcode, because that's the sign, that's the mark of the devil, that's the sign of the devil. So we're going to have to live off the land and hide and live in the hills because, yeah, we can't live in a world where like that, if you know what I mean.
Was there this sense that you had to prepare for a final battle? I mean, was the cult arming itself the way that many cults seem to do?
Yeah, we had stockpiles of weapons. Yeah, I learned to shoot a rifle at a young age, and we had a rifle range there. And always, so I had a backpack always on the ready to go. I would think that I was going to have to leave in the middle of the night. So I always had a survival kit in it, and it was quite fun, actually, always having a backpack ready to go.
It was quite fun.
It was kind of fun, but sort of, like an adventure, but scary at the same time. Like, that's sort of scary, like, you just don't know, like, we're just going to have to run and hide, and I have to always be prepared for running and surviving. Yeah, I never thought I'd be here. Like, I didn't think I'd get older than 20 years old because I thought I'd be dead. So,
did it feel like a game as a kid, or just that you were all in it together, and that must have made it feel both safe and scary, I guess?
Yeah, that's exactly what you've said. You're all in it together. You're united together against the evil in the world, and you're prepared to do anything for that.
What kind of religious practices or rituals happened regularly at Camp David?
So we had Monday night meetings. We had Wednesday night meetings with communion, and then once a month it was foot washing as well as communion. Friday night meetings, which was often we'd have a movie in the theatre. There was a Saturday morning meeting for the men, a Saturday lunch meeting for everybody, and then a Saturday evening meeting, a Sunday morning meeting for everybody, including kids, Saturday lunch, Sunday lunch, and then we'd also have, as kids we had groups like we had sunbeams, bellbirds, so kind of like scouts and that sort of thing. So we'd do that on Sundays as well.
That's a full schedule, Serafina.
Yeah. There's not a lot of time for things. But again, it's one of the things of cults is to keep people, it's the fear and keeping them tired. Because if you keep people tired, they can't think, and so then they're relying on you to think for them. So, yeah, a combination of that. So these meetings would often go late into the night, and then people would those who worked would have to get up for work the next morning.
You mentioned foot washing. Is that because of the time in the Bible where Jesus washes the feet of the disciples on what's called Holy Thursday in the Christian calendar? Right. Is that what that was about?
Yeah, so we'd sit around. I actually enjoyed foot washing. We would sit around. The men would sit in a circle, the women would sit in a circle, and we would wash each other's feet. It was kind of gross if you got the end of the bucket, but it was fun. It was a good time of us just to come, and we'd sit around and chat while we're doing it, and then you'd greet, you'd say God bless you at the end, and then you'd pick up your feet have just been washed, so then you'd pick up the bucket and take it to the person next to you or somebody else and wash their feet. So it was a lot of good times and happy, joyful feelings.
What ceremony did you go through when you were 13?
So I was baptised when I was 13, and it's sort of like an initiation, because when you're 13, you become an adult, and then you can go to the adult meetings and be treated like an adult. So I was baptised in a swimming pool. It was cold because I'd just turned 13, so it was October in New Zealand, and they had to break the ice on the pool. And my dad and one of the other elders, they came in with me and they stood next to me, and then and then Daryl, who was the pastor at the time, he said a bunch of words about, like you're giving your life to Jesus and, washing away all your sins and you're coming back, and then they dunk you under the water and you come up. It's actually, it was fun because it was a celebration. It was like a coming of age initiation in a way. When you're a kid, this is what you live for. This is everything to you, that's being a part of the community and earning your place, and everyone's celebrating because we're all in this together, and it's a celebration. It was fun. It was cold. It was fun.
Could you leave the compound to go to school?
So for me, I could. My parents sent us to a public school. Some people didn't. They did homeschooling. So it was called accelerated Christian education. It was an American homeschooling system. But luckily, my parents wanted to send us to school. And so I went to the public school in the local one, Amberley, and then to an area school in Hardin.
Did you stand out there among the local kids?
Yeah, unfortunately, we didn't need to wear our headscarves and things to school when we were little, but everyone knew we were from the God Squad, and we got it was. Yeah, I got spat on. I'd get called names. People would just, you get bullied for that. But I suppose there was a few of us there together. So I had 2 other girls in the class with me who were also from Camp David. So we sort of go through it together. But at the same time, we're trying to make friends and have friends in school as well. So we're sort of half united but half not, because we're trying to fit in with other people as well as be together. It was confusing. It was a really confusing time.
I guess so. This is what you'd been taught to expect, that the outside world was dangerous and unkind, and I suppose those kids might have been living up to what your expectations were.
You're spot on. It's so interesting because like the seed's already been planted that people are, and then because we're different, it's like, okay, that's what people do. They're mean to us. Because they're bad, they're evil, and that's it. Yeah.
Did you manage to stay in school right through to the end of high school?
No, I got taken out of school in high school when I was about 14 because, and Mum will disagree with me on this. I'm sure that they took me out of school because I was starting to hang out with I was bunking classes and things like that. And Mum said that it was because I asked to be taken out of school, so I'm not sure which one's
like
true on that.
All families, there are disputing recounts.
Yeah. But so my version is that I got taken out of school because I was hanging around with the wrong crowd and, trying to make friends. And so through 14 and halfway through being 15, which is the school certificate year, I was doing homeschooling and I hated it. I really hated it because I was so isolated from everybody, because even doing homeschooling in a cult, you still have to study on your own and you're away from other people. And I felt like I became a little bit dumber as well because I ended up doing this Christian education thing that was very separate and American and very different from our schooling, so that I got dropped down a few levels to catch up. I didn't like that, so I begged to go back to school. And actually we had a homeschooling inspector come around as well, and he told my parents, I think your daughter needs to go back to school. That's she's not going to do well here. My dad asked Daryl if I can go back to school, and he said she can go back to school as long as she wears her headscarf. And I said, I will do anything. I will humiliate myself. I will go back to high school wearing a headscarf. I just want to go back to school. So, I went back to school, and it was really, I suppose, humbling and humiliating to turn up, and everybody's staring at you and just really standing out. But I so wanted to go to school, so I and in the school assembly, I don't know why they did this, but they said, we want to welcome, my name, Miriyum back then, Miriyum back to school. Miriyum, can you stand up? And so I had to stand up in front of everybody at school with my headscarf on. So no. But I was so glad to go back to school. And I had friends who were Christians, not part of the cult, but who were Christians. And it was, I just worked really hard I put in a half year, so I'd missed a year and a half. I caught up and I did my school certificate, and I passed my school certificate that year. So, yeah.
Were you learning things at school that, were coming into conflict with what you'd been taught back in Camp David? How did you square those two competing worldviews?
It was interesting. I was, because when you're raised to believe something, then that's the truth for you. So you at school, I remember having this a debate with my science teacher around evolution and creation, and he was teaching obviously evolution, and I was arguing with him in class about creation and just saying that Jesus created, God created everybody, and like when I think about it now, it's like I'm just cringe, but and he was good. He was really supportive. He had this debate with me. He didn't obviously come over to my side, and I didn't manage to convince him that creation was real. But yeah, it was. You can't argue with somebody who has faith. You can't argue with somebody who has faith, and there's no logic. There's no logic in faith, and so it's just you can say anything that you want, and they won't I was like that.
Was it meaningful for you that he was still respectful to you?
Yeah. I suppose it taught me that, you can have those conversations with people, and even though it annoys you that they don't understand and they don't get you and they aren't converting over to your way of thinking, that I was able to have those conversations. And looking back now, I really appreciate that I was given that opportunity to have those, debates and be able to use my voice.
On air, online, and on the ABC Listen app. This is Conversations with Sarah Kanowski. You can subscribe to the Conversations podcast. Find out more. Just head to abc.net.au/conversations.
As you say, Serafina, life in this cult was normal for you. It was how you were raised. But for your mum and dad, for them it was a choice. Tell me a bit about them. Had they come from religious backgrounds, your parents?
So my mum, no, but my dad was very interesting. His mum was a healer and she could heal people. People would come into the house and she'd put her hands on them. And so he said one guy came in on crutches and he left walking. And he'd see this happen all the time. And he even had the mumps once, and his mum put her hands on the back of his neck and he felt all this heat, and then the mumps went away. But in her room where she did the healing, she had a crystal ball and she had a picture of Jesus on the wall. So, and I think the church often wanted her to join the church because they wanted to show that it was Jesus healing through her, but she never did. It was a gift that she'd been passed down from another woman.
So he had grown up with a world beyond the material, shall we say? This wasn't going to be this wasn't new or foreign to him. This idea that there were things beyond the everyday.
Exactly. Yeah. So and almost like he's probably in a way searching for that as well, because he's grown up with that. It's not odd for him to have been attracted to that. And back in the day, when it first started, it was house meetings and it was just people coming together. It was the idea of living off the land, which was quite fun in those days, to think of doing that and sort of an adventure. And my dad was in the Air Force at the time and they recruited a lot of people from the Air Force, I think because they would follow rules. So, they'd do as they're told.
So your mum and dad had met or fallen in love before joining Camp David, before joining the cult. Do you think your mum had any qualms about joining this religious movement?
Yeah, she didn't want to join, but she loved my dad so much that she did what he wanted to do because she wanted to be with him. But she had been selected for running in the Miss Live-In, which then becomes Miss New Zealand and then Miss World competition. And she used to, she'd wear really short mini skirts. She'd do makeup and she had like this amazing hair and she was just so stunning. And she had to give all of that up for the cult for my dad, I guess, because she just loved him so much. She wanted to be with him. Yeah, that was hard. So it was my dad's, I suppose, adventure and that sort of thing. And the other thing as well, actually, that they said to my dad was that if you are saved, then everybody in your family will be saved. And so my dad took it on himself to be at the cult, to live this life so that his family, not just his immediate family, but extended family, will be saved.
So the leader, Bishop Douglas Metcalfe, claimed he was the reincarnation of Jesus. So was he meant to be immortal? Was that part of his teaching?
It's funny you bring that up. Apparently, yes. He had this... he got really sick once and he went into a coma. And then when he came out of the coma, he said, I've been given, and I think it was 15 more years. He said when he was in the coma, God said to him, choose a suit. And he opened this closet and there was all these skins hanging up in the suit. And he chose the skin and he put it on and God's like, that's the right skin. Now you can go back and you may go back for like 15 years. And he'd always talk about this in the meetings, in the church meetings. And actually, just on a little side note there, that's why his beard was never grey. It was always black, apparently, but it turns out that it was because he dyed his beard, but we thought it was because he was forever young. But then he, 15 years later, as he had said, he called everybody into a meeting. It was on a Wednesday night communion, as far as I remember. And then he said, I want the elders to come outside and pray for me. And the elders all went outside, and he had a heart attack and he died. And it was exactly 15 years later. So from when he had gone into this coma and God had given him this extra time, apparently. And then we put him in the vigil room, and we thought he was going to come back to life. And so we had to sit around and we watched him. I had to go and sit there as well at one point.
What was that like for you at 13?
Yeah, it was very strange. Just seeing this body there. So it was a friend and another girl in the cult and we had to, we did it. It was actually a little bit of a punishment, I think, because we'd gone and listened to this thing at school that with these kids playing this band, and it was bad music, and so we had to go and
watch over Douglas Metcalfe's body as punishment.
As punishment, yeah. And so we just had to sit in the vigil room with his body, and I can't remember how long for. It might have been an hour, a couple of hours, but we all expected him. That was strange. It was the first time actually that I'd seen a dead body, and it was really strange. How you think he's still breathing, he's not really dead. It was just a really strange time. And I thought that he might come back to life. We all thought he would come back to life. You kind of hope that he might come back to life while you're there, because that would be amazing. You kind of freaked out at the same time that you're sitting in a room with a dead body. We thought that he would come back to life, and he didn't.
What was the kind of mood in the cult after this visionary leader who everyone sees as God and hopes to come back to life when he doesn't? How did people handle that?
It was really sad. It was really, really sad. I was devastated, and a lot of people were. And now that I know more of the story and have spoken to more people, a lot of people were also very glad that he was dead. But at the time, and as a child, it was really, really sad. It was, we didn't know how do you move forward when the person that represents everything in your life is gone. Yeah, that was really sad.
And how did things change in terms of leadership after he died?
That's when his son-in-law took over. So there was all these meetings. They called them fishing trips. People would just go long into the night, and they'd all be holding on to each other and all this strange stuff. And then Daryl, his son-in-law, I think he got anointed by the elders to become the next leader. But he was very different, very, very different. No charisma. He was very authoritarian, very structured in the way that he did things. And things just started to get very serious. I think they slowly started to fall. It was a few years after that it fell apart, but it slowly started to fall apart from there.
How long until women and girls started coming forward, Serafina, and telling the stories of what had happened to them in the cult?
We were still there. The cult, we were still, in mostly full swing. I didn't believe it. I thought people were making it up to discredit Douglas Metcalfe, to discredit Daryl. I thought people were making it up. Then once people started saying it, who I respected and looked up to and trusted, people who were like family, that was hard. That was a really hard time. It's like you realise that, okay, this is real. This has happened. This man that I respected, that I loved, that I look up to, that I is not a good person, is a bad person, he's hurt people. Everything's a lie. Everything that he's said is a lie. And then you start thinking, well, then everything, even what my parents believe, is a lie. So everything they've told me is a lie. Everything's just a lie. Yeah, it was the ultimate betrayal, I suppose.
Do you remember the conversations that you had with your parents after the cult started to crumble and your understanding of what the truth was started to shift?
It was a gradual conversation because we're all going through this. So with my parents are also going through the same thing, but in their own way, and also all that. So my parents joined the cult, so they had a life before being a part of Camp David. For us kids, that was our life. We didn't know any different. So they were dealing with it in an adult way, knowing that they've taken themselves into a situation that turned out not to be true. And for us, it was like, what? Now what? What does this mean for our lives? And, trying to comprehend and understand all of that.
Were you angry at them, Serafina?
You know what? I've never I've never been angry at my parents. When the cult broke up, so we were living on the property in a bus, and or everything with it in a cult. So goes to the head of the cult, and so my parents had nothing. They gave everything to him. Unfortunately, my dad's dad had recently died, and as the cult was falling apart, and Dad was left some money, and this money would usually have gone to the cult, but because he died just when it was falling apart, that money didn't end up getting taken by the cult, which meant that my parents could find a place in the local township and buy that. It was a bit falling down and everything, but it was a home. So we moved there, and then not long after, I ended up moving into Christchurch, and I was working. And I'd come out to visit Mum and Dad, and I wouldn't see Dad. And I said to Mum once, I said, why does Dad lock himself in the bedroom when I come out to visit? Does he not love us anymore? And Mum said, no, he feels so guilty. He feels so guilty that he took us to the cult, and he made us live like that, or made you kids live like that. He feels guilty, and so he doesn't want to ruin your lives anymore. And that was a really big turning point for all of us in the family, and I said to Mum, I love Dad. He didn't ruin our lives, and I want him to be a part of our lives. And that changed. Like, that started us having conversations, talking more about it, and we still talk about it. The cult things even to this day, because there's still a lot of it's an ongoing healing process. But that was a big turning point for us, for me, understanding that my dad felt guilty, and that was really powerful for me. And I saw this other side of my dad that I'd never seen, because he was so strict in the cult. All the parents had to be strict. That was the expectation. And he changed so much. My dad is the most gentle, kindest, loving person in the whole world. He's so supportive. He's so wonderful. Yeah, it's really cool.
So your parents were remaking their sense of the world, and so were their kids. How did the movie Wayne's World play a part in that for you?
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that was so much fun. Wayne's World is forever one of my most favourite movies, because so as the cult was falling apart, all of us kids, we just didn't, it's like we have this emotional chaos, but there's freedom that's just starting to grow on us, and this realisation that we don't have any rules anymore. We can do whatever we want. And so we all decided to sit around in the Bethany Lounge, and the Bethany Lounge was like a cafe sort of thing that we had on the property, where we'd get, cups of tea and could buy chips and things like that, that somebody on the property ran. But we decided to sit around in the Bethany Lounge and watch Wayne's World, and it was the funniest movie I have ever seen. It is so funny. I was crying. I was laughing so much that I was crying, because I'd never seen anything like it. We did not watch movies like that. And I think this thing that we felt rebellious as well. We were being rebellious, and we were watching this movie, and it was so cool. It was like nothing we'd seen. And it was that same night as well that later we decided, that song, What If God Was One of Us? We thought, we decided to share that, to play that over the radio. We had a radio system where you'd all have a call sign, and you'd always have to check in where you are, and everyone had one in their house, and so we decided to play that over the radio, and we felt so good. We felt like such rebels. Here we are, like just taking over the radio and playing a song that like we wouldn't be allowed to do, but nobody can stop us now because we're doing what we want.
Were you scared you were going to like get struck down by lightning or something? I mean, how quickly did this inner revolution happen?
That was I think because we were like all in it together and we were just doing it. We just sort of like, we thought, we did wonder. I think at that stage felt just more worried about what the adults were going to say to us than what God was going to say to us.
And what did the adults say? How were they handling your new freedoms?
No, it was strange. They just didn't know what to do because they knew that the place was falling apart and they had no control over us anymore because they'd in their minds, I suppose, done these bad things or been involved or facilitated these bad things. So they didn't know what to do with us. So we were a little bit, I suppose, they were trying to deal with their own emotions, deal with the chaos, not sure what to do with the kids, or teenagers, but... Yeah, wow. that was fun. That was fun.
What else do you remember doing for the first time, Serafina, that you'd always been told you must never, ever do?
So when I first took my scarf off, I was so sure like I would be struck down by lightning. I was out, like I just thought I couldn't go out without my scarf on, and you sort of say that be struck down by lightning thinking, okay, it's metaphorical, or, it's like imaginary, that sort of thing is just a fear. But I genuinely thought I was going to be struck down by lightning and I wasn't. I took my scarf off and I wasn't. And it's like, oh, I got away with that. That nothing bad happened. What else can I do? And so then I got my ears pierced and nothing happened apart from it being very painful and I wasn't expecting that. But, nothing happened. So then, and I wore jeans instead of a skirt and nothing happened. And it was just like this progression of like, oh, I got away with that. I went into a music shop. Nothing happened. Like I was told if I ever go into a music shop, I'll have evil spirits will attack me. They'll be all over me. I'll walk out with evil spirits attaching themselves to my back. That didn't happen. It must have been
incredibly liberating and exhilarating, but was it kind of terrifying too? Like, how did you know what was okay and what wasn't? How were you supposed to navigate the world if all of those rules had just fallen away?
Yeah, it was chaos. It was emotional chaos is the best way that I can describe it. There's no rules and you've got nothing, like everything that guided you, everything that guided you, I suppose, was gone. There's no guidance and nothing, because everything was from the external. So it was always your parents, it was God, it was the Bible, it was what would Jesus say and do. And then when that's gone, there's just nothing. There's nothing at all. So you have to make this up yourself, because the other thing that you've been taught is that the world is bad and evil when you can't trust people in the world. So if you can't trust people in the world and you can't trust everything that you've been raised and the people that have raised you, then who do you trust? And you don't trust yourself because you don't know yourself, because you've never been taught to know yourself. You don't have that confidence in yourself. So it was complete chaos, and you're just making it up as you go.
So how did you go about building that for yourself, like inventing yourself in a way?
Well, that's really what it was. So you're just, starting off with those trying things, and seeing how, and I suppose experiencing the result of that. So all those little things of genes and getting piercings, and then then alcohol, and then you realise that alcohol makes you feel, sends you a bit crazy, and then for me, I wanted to travel. I always thought I would never be allowed to travel because I'd be, dead. So I was just waiting to travel when Jesus came back, and I thought, I can travel now. So I set off overseas, and I travelled for about 5 years, backpacking, and I was investigating different, I suppose, not religions, not Christian religions, but different, Buddhism. I spoke a lot to Hare Krishnas, just different people from different faiths, different beliefs. So yeah, it was exploration. I loved travelling. I met so many amazing people, and I didn't realise the world was full of just incredible people. It wasn't what I'd been taught. And you learn that everybody has their different points of view, the different perspectives based on their upbringing, but the majority of people in the world are just really beautiful people. Yeah.
You have your own son now. What do you teach him about religion?
I teach him that everyone has a belief of, where they're at the time based on what how they've been raised, what brings them comfort, and that's okay. like that's okay for them to have their beliefs. But I've taught him that there isn't a God, but I've based that on my own experience, and I've said to him, from what I understand and what I believe, there isn't a God. There's no such thing as God. People are just at different stages in their life, and they find things that bring them comfort. And I'll say to him, so is there a God? And he'll say, no, there's no God. But I do let him know, like, that's what I think. That's what I believe. You have to find your own way. And I get him to question everything. I said, even question me. Like, I'll always tell you the answer, that I will always tell you the truth. I will always tell you the truth. Anything you ask me, the truth that I know it to be. I said, but question everything. So I raised him to be a free thinker, independent thinker, confident in his own way of thinking and finding the truth and the answers that are right for him.
It's quite a contrast to to what was happening in Camp David.
The opposite of how I was raised.
Are you still in touch with any of the kids that you grew up with? What's it like to talk to them now?
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of them I have stayed in touch with, and we'll catch up. Maybe once every 2 or 3 years we'll catch up, and it's just like, but a lot of us went our own ways because we were just trying to make our own way in the world. And when COVID hit last year, I thought, you know what, I'm just going to create a Facebook group for us and just say, ex-Camp David kids reunite, and just see who wants to, because I didn't know. I thought maybe they'd be like, no, they just want to stay. It was so cool. This group still exists, but we're not so active on it now. But during that COVID phase, and when we first reconnected, it was awesome because we're sharing all these stories and having laughs, having cries, saying what, being raised in Camp David meant to us, where we're at now. All of this, like, a lot came out, and I felt, and the others felt this as well, like we felt more complete, and we've come back to our roots, but in a way that we've chosen to come back to our roots in solidarity in each other, like finding your family, probably like connecting with family again. It was really, really cool. It was really cool.
Another thing that brings you a lot of joy in your life is cycling. What new sense of yourself has cycling been able to give you?
Cycling has been amazing for me. It's given me this confidence in myself, fitness, health, and I feel like anything in life you can relate to cycling. It's never giving up. It's pushing yourself. It's going outside your comfort zone. So yeah, I cycle all the time now, and I started cycling I was cycling for a bit before COVID, and I was doing a lot of community work around COVID time, which stopped when that hit. And I thought, what am I going to do now? I've got this blank slate. What am I going to do right now with my life? And I thought, you know what? I love cycling. I love creating videos. I love creating community, and bringing people together. There's all these bike paths around Adelaide, so if I had have known about these bike paths sooner, I would have started cycling sooner. And maybe there's other people out there who would do the same. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make videos on cycling around Adelaide. And so that's what I did. And it started taking off. People love it. And I think because so many people didn't know about these bike paths. So I've just kept going with it. It's so cool. It's so much fun.
Serafina, it's really, really amazing to hear your story. Thank you so much for sharing it on Conversations.
Well, thank you for having me along. I really appreciate it.
For more episodes, hit subscribe or grab the ABC Listen app and listen to this show and many others all ad-free.